The idea that some ancient civilizations had high technology and engineering, much as we do today, fascinated me. So I enlisted the help of British engineer Christopher Dunn. But before we met in Egypt, I visited him at the Danville metal stamping plant.
Okay, we move beyond now what it takes to actually cut something. How were they checking it? You know, how were they guiding that tool? Because
okay.
obviously they had to have had some metrology instruments. They had to engage metrology instruments to be able to verify that they were maintaining parallelism between this surface and the opposing surface right there. And you just don't get that by line of sight or saying, you know, oh,
That's good enough.
we'll get Joe on the job today because he's got really good eyesight.
Yeah.
Eats a lot of
Now,
carrots.
see, I could go with some of that in small grooves and stuff like you're saying there, but that one,
I mean, and so basically the conclusion on these artifacts and a lot of the other artifacts that we look at is, you know, they were using tools that no longer exist. They're not in the archaeological record anymore. They do not exist anywhere. And so then the question is, okay, what are the minimum requirements? What's the minimum tooling level or technology, if you will, to be able to do this? And this is the most striking example where people just go, whoa. Because
well, how did,
for you as an engineer and also an expert machinist, corners, inside corners, mean something to you, right?
certainly.
Yeah. 5/32 of an inch inside corner on those boxes, top to bottom. Now that photograph's a little blurred.
Now, that's not two pieces coming together.
No, it's cut
That's
out of
just
a
a square granite fillet,
solid block.
consistent all the way down. And why would they really have to be so precise is what blows my mind.
Now this is how they would, you know, conventionally they would say this is how they built something like that. And then for squaring something off, of course, you know, the way a carpenter will square a frame, obviously measure from corner to corner, which is low tech compared to what we have here. And you can't verify that with a piece of string. I mean, you know, that kind of precision you can't verify with a piece of string. So that's what we're faced with, and there's not just one there. It's not like they got lucky on one box. There's over 20 of them in this facility, down in the rock tunnels at the Serapeum near the Saqqara in Egypt.
So I'm back to they had, like you mentioned earlier, they had hundreds and hundreds of people spending hours and days and months and years doing this stuff.
But let me take you back to the historical information on the Serapeum. Okay, you know what they were supposed to be using for those boxes? They were burying the Apis bull, which was a revered animal. Okay, the Apis bull's lifespan was supposed to be 28 years, and they say that when an Apis bull was selected, they would start building his burial tomb. This is Egyptologists.
Is that what they say? Okay. Well, really.
So, 28 years. Now, they've also done some time studies on how fast they can remove granite using the ancient Egyptian tools. Okay? Now, you use the material removal rate of the old methods and
The bowl's
multiply
long
that out
gone, huh?
by the time, you know, using the maximum number of workers that you can actually get in the work site. And you're not talking 28 years, you're talking 50 plus years. And that's just roughing the bloody thing out. That's not even lapping it finished.
So now we're talking power tools, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing, I'm looking at that picture and there's tool marks on it. Anything we machine, though most of what we machine, there are tool marks, you just don't see them because they're so minute. But also because of the feet of the tool controls that surface finish. If you plow down through a piece of any kind of material, you're going to have a rougher surface. If you go slower, the feed rate's slower, the RPMs are faster, you're going to have a nicer, smoother finish. So this blows me out of the water a little bit because of those tool marks. That's telling me they wasted no time cutting through this thing.
Okay, it's really
Now,
fast. I mean,
I've been talking lapping and all this.
Yeah, this is a feed rate of 100,000 per revolution, which it'd be difficult to achieve that in aluminum using carbide tools, let alone in granite.
Right.
And,
Okay.
you know, so basically what you're looking at is something that is only explained if you consider non-conventional types of machining.
My first impression was, with very little historical background, that all this was done by hand. It was lapping and chiseling and took many hours, days, weeks, took a large amount of time. But after looking at some of the granite that I've seen, I question if it was even feasible to do by hand. And it kind of leads me into directions of thinking about the application of machine tools, for lack of a better, some time ago.
I think all the evidence in Egypt indicates that there was a high civilization in prehistory. Now, when we look at the tools and the technology available to the ancient Egypt, we have to consider that the culture that built the pyramid, that built all these other monuments, was far older, because the tools do not exist for that particular epoch. It doesn't matter what site you go to in Egypt, whether it's Abu Ghraib, Abu Rawash, whether you're going to the temples in Upper Egypt, there's always some signature of technology. And that signature is actually the machine tools that we used and the marks that they left in the stone. And those marks are not just the cutting marks, but the geometry of the stone. I don't think it's an exaggeration to assume that a culture that has the genius to devise these wonderful miracles of engineering limited that expertise and genius with just the design of the product. They had to have had the tools to match the job.
According to Chris's theory, the ancients not only had electricity, but they had power tools as well. Chris shares my interest in ancient technology, so I had him take me around Giza for a day to look at things from an engineer's perspective. One of the great mysteries of the past is the enigma of the colossal cities of the ancients. How were they able to quarry and move these giant granite blocks? Many of these stones are extremely hard and difficult to cut, such as basalt and granite. How did the Egyptians build these complex geometric wonders? Did they use brute force or some kind of high technology? So what we found here on the Giza Plateau is one of these granite blocks that's been contoured. Chris is gonna check it with his precision tools to see if there's some indication of modern machining techniques here on the granite.
What we have here is a prime example of modern machining. We have a contour, not a true radius, but it's a contour. And the contour is precise. If you look at the gauge, the surface gauge, you'll see that there's very little light that's showing between the interface and the granite. The gauge is accurate to within 1/10,000th of an inch, which is 1/20th the thickness of a human hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very uniform then.
It's very uniform. There's some imperfections, but probably if I was to estimate it how precise it was, I mean, I would say I'd say 5/1000th of an inch, which is quite remarkable, really.
Okay, really, yeah.
Yeah, over that entire contour. Now, the features of this stone, you have this radius here that blends into. It's almost like it goes straight into the blend radius at the face.
Okay.
Okay. So, obviously, I mean, you know, you look at this, you can say there's no way you could turn it on a lathe to achieve a true radius. So they had to have had a means of replicating that contour with precision over the entire length of the block.
Okay, and how would you do that?
Well, today we would do it with like a CNC machine, or we could do it with in the old days in machine shops we'd do it with a profiler, where you'd actually follow a template with a rotating tool or vibrating tool.
Okay.
And and continue that, step it over, and continue that contour with precision right to the end. Now, this is where it becomes interesting, because you need to get a really good shot of this corner. Okay, so now what we have here is something very, what we recognize in modern manufacturing as actually it's an engineered or designed feature. If you want to marry or fit a object with a sharp corner with a face, and also be able to use a tool to create this that has greater rigidity and stability. So you'd use a larger tool, and this is done with a ball, like a ball radius tool, a ball end mill. So this radius would have been done with a ball end mill, or what we call a ball end mill, where you have the bottom of the tool is actually shaped like a ball, half a ball. But the really interesting part of that is this relief, the way it comes down.
And you're right, the undercutting and this groove right here.
So,
Okay.
and as you can see, you have the larger radius here, but anything that would fit up against it could have a smaller radius.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So that is a unique feature. Now the other thing is the size of the radius.
Okay.
So that is going to require another tool.
So if you were just bashing this out with a dolerite ball, you wouldn't have this undercutting like that.
Well, actually, they wouldn't have bashed this out and achieved this.
They could never have bashed this out and achieved this.
No. That's the. I'm going to melt this. That again.
There, nice.
I'm going to melt this forming wax and press it into the corner. And I'd actually, yeah, that looks good. I'd actually done that previously, so that already had the shape of the radius.
So now you've got a wax form of the radius, and you can use that to check the consistency of the radius.
Correct. And so if you check this radius, even in this corner, okay, where you have 1, 2, 3 surfaces actually meeting, and if I slide it along that radius, we get pretty much the same radius, except for this flat part, because evidently it came out, or I think it must be a larger radius there, but when you get down into here, let me look at that. Yeah. So you have a consistent radius, and the question is, for something like this, why, to get something even remotely close to a perfect radius, it would take a tremendous amount of time by hand, but then to replicate that along the length of the block.
Right, to keep it so uniform is just so much effort to do that.
Right.
But if you're using some kind of machining tool, it would happen naturally. You couldn't do it any other way.
That is correct. Yeah. That is correct. We have the other half, or not a half, but the portion of the block that has been broken off. Evidently, they took the end off, and it doesn't have the same features, but the basic geometry is the same, and the radius, as you slide it down, radius is fairly close. There's obviously going to be some imperfection, but that's a precision radius gauge, 15/32 radius. See, that's incredible. I mean, that speaks volumes, to find something like that on something so ancient. That I would have to use a modern instrument or a modern gauge.
And
to check its precision.
Well, and would a millimeter gauge also? I mean, doesn't matter whether it's inches or millimeters. I mean,
no, a radius is a radius.
A radius, right?
Yeah.
But and so.
No, it wouldn't matter.
But you have the whole thing of the pyramid inch and them using those measurements, but that's not what you're looking at.
No. It doesn't matter whether it's in inches, millimeters, cubits, whatever, pyramid inches.
Yeah, okay. A length is a length, a radius is a radius.
Right. I mean, it's the consistency and accuracy of it. Of course, this is not quantitative in it by any means, because for that you really need to have some measuring instruments to check coordinates on it. Today we would use a CMM machine, a coordinate measuring machine, and check it that way. But no, of course, the other part of it is that if you had a precise template and you fit it to the template, then you could have that. You could create that contour. The evidence of machine work is in this block. It's in other blocks. The mountain of evidence that we find is in the Serapeum.
Okay.
In those giant granite boxes.
And it's kind of these inside corners that are so difficult to make without machine tools, right? I mean, is that kind of what?
Yeah. I mean, this is not done with a dolerite pounder.
Or a chisel, for that matter.
You won't. No, not a chisel. Not a chisel.
So you have to ask yourself, why would they even want some curved piece of granite like this and then go through the effort to actually create it?
Well, that's a question that I've asked myself. And it is the obvious question is, why would they do that? Because it doesn't resemble anything that that would fit with a statue, or it's obviously for construction.
Yeah, I mean,
but in construction, we don't work with this kind of precision.
okay, yeah, all right.
And there's another piece of evidence that we'll look at down near the Valley Temple, on the south side of the Valley Temple.
Of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, there's only one left, and that's the Great Pyramids of Giza. What secrets do they hold? And what we see here is basalt paving blocks on the southern side of the pyramid. But here we find something curious. We see actually saw marks here in the basalt. And in fact, this big saw mark here is going far behind inside this block. I mean, it would appear to be modern sawing. However, apparently this was done not in modern times, but in ancient times. Yet, looking at this cut, it must have been made by something like a machine tool and a diamond saw. This is not something that could have been made with crude tools like copper chisels. Here we also see saw cuts, and we can see a saw cut right here along the edge of this basalt block. This too appears to be done with some kind of a modern tool, yet this cut was apparently done in ancient times. Were modern construction techniques used in the building of the pyramids, or were they built with stone balls and copper chisels?
Well, we know that there has been cataclysms in history, prehistory. I don't think that nobody can argue that. The only thing that argues against it is some of the conventional evidence, archaeological evidence for the time period of the pyramids. But if you look into that time period that's ascribed for the building of the pyramids, you don't find the tools. They're nowhere to be found. Mm-hmm. And I believe you have to go back earlier. There has to be an earlier civilization that suffered a huge cataclysm, was totally wiped off the face of the planet. Okay.
Interesting here, this hall is kind of like towards the Machu Picchu kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So here at the Pyramid of Abu Rawash, not many tourists come to this when it's on top of a mountain and appears to have been buried in some kind of landslide or something. Yeah, this is like a rock cut ramp right through a solid mountain, and then they've lined it with large limestone blocks, like the entrance here to a pyramid. Wow. One of the alternative theories on building the pyramids, one that's been proposed by a French chemist named Joseph Davidovits, is that the pyramids were actually poured into place, and the blocks are a form of molecular concrete. We know that the Egyptians used a form of concrete, the Romans used a form of concrete, the Mayans used a form of concrete. And here at Abu Rawash, just outside of Giza, we're also seeing the extensive use of concrete. There is extensive granite down here inside the pit of the pyramid of Abu Rawash. And granite is not found here at Giza, so any granite is coming from the Aswan quarries, which are 500 miles to the south. Chris is saying that there must have been a roof over this giant pit at one time. You can see part of it. But there would have been apparently massive stones, lintels spanning this roof. Must have been huge. Here's a very interesting granite slab here at Abu Rawash. It shows all the indications of having been cut with a modern saw. It's been smoothed, and you can see, in fact, the saw marks on the block.
Well, you know what, David? There are certain features to this that really don't lend to the theory that it was sawn.
Really?
Yeah. You see this cut right here where the cut ends? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, it's on a radius. All right? And it goes this way.
So it's
Very large radius. But
okay,
it
it's
is
arcing,
like it's
that
arcing
way a
like
little
that.
bit. All right.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to be using a saw, you won't get that.
you won't.
It'd be impossible.
It would be impossible. Okay.
If
well,
you're
that's-
sawing from here to here, regardless of what you use, it would be impossible. Unless, I mean, whatever cut that had a radius to it. Now, the question is it a true radius? What size is it? Obviously, it's quite huge because, it probably goes out to there, the radius.
So what kind of a tool would you say would be used to cut that then?
Well, I mean, I've seen similar features in a machine shop. Okay.
Okay.
All right, and that's another feature on this. If you have a milling cutter, a very large milling cutter, and it's tilted on an angle, then you're going to cut a large radius on the surface. Okay. Actually, you're cutting more of an ellipse, but if you're covering the area enough, then it's going to appear like a radius. In fact, there are calculations used in tool and die making that give you the angle of the tilt of your tool associated with the diameter of the tool that will give you a specific radius.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean this is remarkable because it has all those features. Now, okay, forgetting that, if we come back to this particular object, what tool actually created this. That to me is, I don't know of any primitive method that would create that. We have a feature right here where evidently there was, it came into a particular area and then it went off track, so they lifted it up and proceeded on, because you've got a ridge there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. You can see it. Yeah, and feel it. Right.
Yeah.
So
But
they were starting to
when
cut
you-
it. Right. Okay.
But the interesting thing is when you look at the striations on the block, because you can see them
Yeah.
right here,
Uh-huh.
it does appear that it was a tool that was radiused. Now, of course, one could argue that they used a saw that was somehow curved, and you know, had one fella on one side, another fella on the other, and they were just doing this business. But the problem with that is, how did it create this curve here?
Uh-huh.
And so if we take this straight edge, you'll see that there's light in the center.
Uh-huh. Right.
Okay.
So it's slightly dished out.
It's slightly dished out. And as you track across the surface, that light does not go away, nor does it change much. Fascinating.
So I mean, in the mainstream Egyptology explanations of bashing this out with a stone, using copper chisels, that would be impossible in your mind to create this.
Well, you wouldn't create something like that, bashing it out. Now, there have been some there has been experimental work done where they have cut granite using a copper saw and sand, and but to the extent that they would actually create something like this is quite remarkable. Not only that, look at this, you know, the size of it. That's quite a large saw.
This is a very interesting block. I mean, and so in your mind, this is evidence of modern type of machining, advanced machining, but done in ancient times.
I would say that if we were looking for evidence of ancient methods, I wouldn't expect to see this. If I was in a modern machine shop, this would not surprise me.
You know, with this fascinating block of granite that appears to be sliced by a giant diamond saw, this is the kind of thing that I'm hoping we're going to find on the Altiplano of the Andes in Peru and Bolivia at Puma Punku and other sites there. This is the ancient sun temple of Abu Gharaib on the edge of the western desert of Saqqara. This ruined pyramid area once contained an obelisk at the top, and all around it are scattered blocks of granite and alabaster. Here at Abu Gharaib, there is evidence of ancient machining. Chris, what do you think about this block here of granite?
Well, as you can see, David, there is a hole. It's actually been core drilled, and it has similar features to the hole and core that Petrie described in his book Pyramids and Temples of Giza, and which I wrote in my book.
Okay.
And the striations are visible there. it's very difficult. I mean, it would be difficult to find out if it's actually a spiral. But if it's anything like the core that is found in the Petrie Museum, then those striations do form a spiral down the entire length of it.
And that would be only done with some modern machining type tool,
That's what I concluded, that it was some kind of sonic core drill.
a sonic core drill
Yeah.
doing that.
Right.
And what is the mainstream explanation for a hole like that?
The mainstream explanation for doing this kind of work is to use copper and sand, and essentially rotate the copper in two directions, okay, with a bow drill.
And it's is it a hollow copper tube then?
A hollow copper tube attached to a piece of wood, where you rotate the wood and the copper by wrapping string around it and attaching the ends to a piece of wood.
Like a bow and a drill.
Right, and then you just rotate it that way.
But
The problem with that method, though, is that the core in the Petrie Museum shows that the spiral is only in one direction.
Okay.
And also the feed lines, or the feed rate, that's the distance each striation has, the distance the drill goes in a 360-degree rotation,
Okay.
is almost 1/8 of an inch, which is an incredible feed rate. And we see striations here, and like I said, it's very difficult to really tell whether they are a continuous spiral down the length of it. But still, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. This is what they call the alabaster altar here at Abu Gharaib. It's a curious star shape made with about 4 giant slabs of alabaster, and it also shows some evidence of ancient machining.
Yep. Well, what we have here is a perfect circle cut into the stone, and essentially it looks like what they did is they came down with a core drill in this corner right here, because you have that machine as a depression. That would have left a central core. But then what they would have done is machined this surface to meet this feature right here. So they started out with a hole and then machined that. You see the difference in tool marks, or the difference in geometry here. You have the geometry of this tool, which has a larger radius here, and then you have the geometry of the drill. And so they drilled that out, knocked the core out, and brought this in. And then cut this onto a radius. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these features around the block. Now, what they were intended for, it's a mystery.
Yeah. What is the purpose of all this, and even why they would cut this out like this is...
And there's another of these features over on that other corner, except that it's not a full circle, it's just like a half a circle.
And so if you were actually doing this with a very slow, laborious hand drilling thing, you probably wouldn't have, overcut it like this, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but the problem that we have with the conventional theory of cutting stones, such as with, stone and bashing with stone, chisels, or just grinding it with or lapping it, is why, these surfaces are very smooth, okay? But you'll notice some of them, the surfaces are smooth. But you'll notice that the alabaster is very brittle.
And it has
And
the
here we go.
crystals in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is not a stone that you would actually bash with another stone.
With another stone,
to
okay.
achieve this kind of
Smoothness,
flat,
right,
smoothness
right,
and flat
right.
surface. They created this feature as a relief, so that a mating part or a mating object, something that would fit snugly over the top of it.
Okay.
Because if you follow this surface here, it goes right into this area here, where this radius starts. Okay. So that's the only explanation that I have for that. That you know, this is meaningless except for clearance.
Clearance. Okay,
Yeah.
and that other stone blocks then were fitted down in here.
Or whatever it was.
Whatever it was.
Stone,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Out of stone or even possibly metal parts.
Whatever material that was available in prehistory.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, this is another example, and there are many of them throughout Egypt. Another example of very, very high proficiency in cutting stone, and in my opinion, they had to have had advanced technology. And here is the other feature right here, where you have that circle, which is actually a half.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and the same kind of features, the same radius here coming into the corner, but this is a sharper radius right here. So you have a sharp radius there. And to the life of me, I can't understand why they found these necessary, but obviously they had a need. I mean, today in manufacturing, we have lots of weird shapes.
Uh-huh.
But,
Yeah.
well, and here's another one, see?
Yeah.
But they didn't, this is further away from the corner.
From the corner. Yeah, right.
All right, so it's quite fascinating.
So it's clear that they started each of these niches by first coring down here and then cutting away the rest.
Yeah. So evidently, what I would suggest is that so that something fit on top of this thing, and these surfaces are on an angle, and so whatever fits slipped on here, and they cut this out as a relief, and so whatever fit on it came in to this surface right here, and so what you have is a relief right there.
That's great. And now, wow, look at this, you guys. Here's a saw mark on this circular piece. Look at that. It's been cut in. Now, how did they do that?
I think we need to get up on top so that we can examine it more closely. Basically, you're going to start here. You're going to reach the top, or the top of the radius, the maximum distance, and then taper out. So I'm going to insert this room key, and we'll check it out.
And it gets deeper there, and then it gets shallower and comes back out again. Yeah.
Right. That's fascinating.
And anytime.
Well, with this feature and all the other features that surround us, I am totally convinced that this platform was designed to hold something else and then lock it into position. Because tightening, you know, just this feature alone indicates that they were placing something on there, and because otherwise, why have it?
I mean, this is a pretty sophisticated and like modern engineering way to fit giant blocks or even some kind of machinery or something, right?
Well, it's not sophisticated or even modern. Modern by our terms, in the last ever since manufacturing first started, it's a common feature.
Mm-hmm.
They use it to attach objects to shafts. They will cut something like that and then drive a screw in and hold it together.
And I mean, and of course there would be like say 4 of these around this circular thing, to attach things.
But then with the other features, that indicate that something actually was dropped on here, it all begins to make more sense now.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that this was also probably cut with like a circular saw, some like a machine tool?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say with the weight of evidence throughout Egypt, obviously they were using machine tools, but this could have been cut with anything, you know. It's very, very simple feature, and there's not much material to
remove there.
Right.
Okay, sure.
And look at this one here, David. How did it get here? It's suspended like a dolmen, but it's actually on that corner right there.
Yeah, it's touching on like 3 points here, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
a huge block of limestone, man.
That's huge.
These are weird. Wow. So here we have a very curious series of megalithic alabaster bowls. They have they're scooped out. There's a hole on one side to let some liquid out. Each one has these curious cogged features on it. The cogged features also have small uniform drill marks going on them. It almost seems like they're a form for something else to fit over. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. Looking at these, I would say, and we will take a different view of them. But what I would suggest is that these were the basis for a column that fit down in here. And then perhaps the column itself had a hole.
Was it a
All the-
hollow going all the way down?
through it.
Uh-huh.
And then probably it collected water from a gutter above,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And then the water drained into these bowls and out of that hole,
Okay.
okay? Now, there are some of these on the other side of the pyramid that are in situ. So we could take a look at those.
Okay. And you think these have actually then been moved here by?
Yeah, these have been moved here. Yeah, and you will see that clearly when you look at the ones that are in situ.
Okay. Yeah, looking at this west side of the pyramid here at Abu Ghraib, which once had an obelisk on the top, it appears that this whole pyramid was just destroyed in some giant cataclysm, some big earthquake that just destroyed it and scattered these blocks around. Is that what you think?
This is, yeah, essentially what I described earlier in that there was this huge cataclysm. All these devices, which were finely tuned to the resonance of the planet, and the planet was overloaded with energy, and they just vibrated apart. And you can see some of the blocks are cracked. If we walk around this side right here, there's one actually in the towards the center of the pyramid, a huge block of limestone that appears to have been, just thrown up and then dropped down
and then split
cracked.
apart and cracked and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, and the idea that it would have been just somebody came here and decided to tear it down, that would have been extremely difficult, right? I mean, to just bring these blocks down.
Yeah, I mean, they possibly could have tumbled these down, but why pick a block, tumble it down, and then not use it? And leave it here.
Yeah, right. I mean, if they wanted to quarry and wanted building material, why not take these stones with them?
Why not use the one that you've already tumbled?
Yeah.
And what we have here are hundreds of blocks that have just been thrown off the pyramid.
Thrown away. So it's like
Yeah.
more like a natural disaster rather than a man-made destruction.
Yes.
So this is all just cut into solid rock here, these chambers. Man. So, what is, these are the...
Coffins here. The big coffin and the cover, and he covered it with the wood to make protection for it.
protection for it. But here it is. Here are the giant sarcophagi without the cover, and that's the lid. So it's weighing 85 tons. And how much is this lid weighing?
I think all cover and the coffin with 85 tons. You have to go down if you really much.
It's a really strange place, huh? I mean, we're deep underground here, and on either side are these bays, and in these bays are these giant, huge basalt sarcophagi. They're incredible with these huge lids, and then, man, these things, they weigh 85 tons. The lids weighing like 50 tons. It's extremely hard. Basalt. I mean, how they could move these inside here, it defies explanation, really. And it's such a cramped, tight area that you can't get a lot of workers in here to do things. It's amazing. Man, wow. Look how this is cut here, too. You can see how it's suddenly sloping down like that. Man.
You try to make it. My friend here.
Wow. How did they make it so smooth and polished?
I think they are very technical worker in this time to make it very, very, very soft to touch.
Wow. Boy, these edges are really square, too.
This one?
Yeah, here you can see the lid pushed back. Sarcophagus is open. It's been chipped away right here, probably trying to open it. According to the traditional Egyptologists, these giant boxes were sarcophagi for the mummified bulls of Apis, sacred bulls of ancient Egypt. Yet the big mystery really is how they could possibly get boxes, such gigantic 85-ton basalt sarcophagi like this in here. And in theory, just to put a mummified bull inside. Here, it's very smooth here, very uniform radius. It's these inside corners of box like this that are so difficult to make without modern machinery, modern machining tools. According to Chris, it's basically impossible to bash something like this out, and you have to have modern machining tools, modern sonic drills and saws to really make something like that. And even today, this would be almost impossible to make, even with modern machinery. Wow, this is just so amazing. So smooth along the sides of this basalt. It's so smoothed out, and then it's been etched here. Yeah, here you see the edges here of the box, the sarcophagi. It's all chipped here, probably from crowbars going in to try and lift this 25-ton lid off the top. So it's all bashed in and chipped on this corner. But otherwise, it's just so smooth, such a perfect corner here. Wow, it's just really amazing. Wow. I'll just see if I can lift this 25-ton lid up a little bit. There we go. Oh, I can just hold it up for a few seconds. There. Oh, that's about it. Whew. This is the 85-ton granite box that's unfinished. It's still rough. You can see right here in the corner, but the lid is now on the other side. So apparently this was being moved into the Serapeum, but in the end was just left here. Some Egyptologists think this was probably being taken out, although others say it was being brought in. You can see how it barely fits in these tunnels, this giant 85-ton block. I mean, how even workers could be moving around this while they theoretically moved it in here. It's really it's an enigma. I mean, how could they do this? This is amazing. It was an incredible day. We still had time to visit the mysterious Red Pyramid, a pyramid with some sort of chemical residue inside. All right, now we can move into the main chamber now. Watch your head. Wow, look at this corbelled ceiling here. Oh man, this is cool. Oh wow, that's high.
Similar to the Grand Gallery.
Yeah, it is really similar, isn't it? Ah, it's hot down here too, man. Oh. So do you think we're actually, you don't think we're underground here, are we? We're more like a level of the Giza Plateau?
Actually, we're not underground, but we're right at the
Ground level, okay. Yeah.
and we can see that.
Look how perfectly these blocks are fitted together. That's incredible masonry. Man, there's a huge block right here. Lintel over the door. So this is the main inner chamber here, huh? And so it's 3 giant corbelled chambers deep inside the pyramid here. There's a very strong ammonia smell in here, which would be from perhaps chemicals that were used in here at some time, or would it just be from bat guano or something?
It smells just like ammonia. It doesn't smell like urine, which would have a different smell, but this smells like pure.
Like pure ammonia, yeah, well, like phosphate or ammonia. I mean, it's a really strong smell, very strong chemical smell in here. It's overpowering. You almost can't stand it. I mean, you couldn't stay down here very long.
Oh man, things.
Yeah. Wow, there's certainly a very strong, resonant, echoing it within these chambers. It seems as if it's built for resonance and sound.
And she's 2 chambers away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
chamber
yeah.
and then down the passage.
That's right, and then she's down that other passage. Yeah, that's wow. She's just stamping her foot on a wooden platform. Yeah, that's something. Sounds like Godzilla's coming. Here inside the pyramid too, we can really see how perfect the construction is. How these massive blocks of limestone are perfectly fitted together. I mean, you couldn't slip a piece of paper or a knife in here. You see how the joints all come together extremely finely. I mean, this is really precision construction. This is the finest kind of megalithic stone masonry that we can find anywhere. Oh, back on the surface. Daylight again. Oh, that was quite a trip. You don't have to be crazy to drive in Cairo, but it helps. How was the Great Pyramid built? Was it built by thousands of slaves as a monument to a pharaoh? Or did it have some other purpose? Today we will explore a revolutionary new theory on the purpose of the pyramids and how they were built.
Obviously, they reached a point where they said, well, we've got all this energy coming through these things, why don't we harness it? So they built the Great Pyramid, and they harnessed some of that energy.
I wanted to explore the subject of the Great Pyramid being some sort of giant machine. So I arranged to meet with British engineer Christopher Dunn in Cairo. The first thing I did was take him to Giza, where he could explain to me his theory of the Giza power plant.
In the Giza power plant, I questioned the theory whether the pyramids were actually tombs. And after conducting considerable research, I could not find any evidence that they were any original burials within the pyramids. Of course, that raises the question, if they were not tombs, what were they used for? What I did is I examined the Great Pyramid and did a reverse engineering study of it. What I concluded was that it was actually used to generate energy. And it generated energy in a way that was extremely holistic. It actually did more than just generate energy. It relieved the stresses in the Earth's plate, and it also drove the plate into harmony. That harmony then possibly could have affected the people in the area, creating an environment, an acoustic environment, that was peaceful and extremely beneficial to their health. However, what leads me to that conclusion are the details within the Great Pyramid. And what we have is a series of passageways and chambers and shafts. It was a study of the dimensions and the geometry of these shafts and chambers and the residual material that were left inside. Also, the selection of materials in particular areas. In the Great Pyramid, we have a descending passage that goes down to a bedrock chamber, about 350 feet from the opening. Of course, we could talk about the precision of the Great Pyramid, and the precision is considerable. It is, that passageway itself was surveyed by William Flinders Petrie in the 1880s. And he determined through his measures that the passageway was straight in the constructed portion to within 20 thousandths of an inch. That's the thickness of a thumbnail. Over the entire length of the chamber, the full 350 feet, it only varied a quarter of an inch. That is an amazing precision. The subchamber itself, I am now coming to realize, was actually using hydraulics to cause a pulse generator. It actually generated a pulse that drove the entire pyramid into harmony. Of course, moving up into the pyramid, we have the ascending passage and many unusual features that are found there, such as the granite stone plugs at the end of the passageway. They don't seem to have any real construction purpose, while the theory is that they were there to prevent tomb robbers from entering the center of the pyramid. Really, all they did was attract attention. And Al-Mamun, when he chiseled into the Great Pyramid in 812 AD, did so when he identified those granite plugs and determined that perhaps something may lie behind them. And sure enough, what lay behind them was a shaft. He chiseled the limestone around them and a shaft straight up into the heart of the Great Pyramid. Coming to the end of that small shaft is what they call a Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is considered to be an architectural masterpiece. It consists of corbelled layers, 7 corbelled layers, where the gallery actually gets smaller towards the top. Also, along the side of the Grand Gallery, we have ramps, and into the ramps are cut these notches. These notches are cut vertically into the ramps. There are 27 pairs of these notches, and as you go along the length of the gallery, you come to what has been called the Great Step. Climbing up the step, you have a horizontal passage, and then through the horizontal passage, a small antechamber, then again another small passage into the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber complex is the heart of the power plant. It is constructed solely of granite. It is tuned to a high degree to resonate at 440. It also emits naturally an F-sharp chord, and this was detected by an acoustic engineer named Tom Danley in 1995. The chamber is freestanding within the heart of the pyramid. It is not connected to the core blocks and is free to resonate and vibrate at will. Overlying the King's Chamber, we have 5 layers of granite beams. These granite beams, I speculated in my book, are actually resonating beams. They are unusually cut. They're cut square and flat on 3 sides, but the top side is very rough. The roughness on the top side, I believe, was done in order to tune the beams. Just like you would tune a bell, you would actually remove material until you achieve the tone that you wanted. The whole complex is like a musical instrument, and each feature lends resonance to the other feature. In the King's Chamber, we have a box. I call a box, conventionally it's called a sarcophagus. However, there have been no mummies, original burials found in any pyramid, and there was nothing found in the Great Pyramid even when Al-Mamun entered in 812 AD. So the question is, what were these for? Also in the chamber are two shafts that lead to the outside of the pyramid on angles. These shafts, in the northern shaft, they have a 4.8 by 8.4 dimension. That is suitable for a waveguide in the microwave region, a hydrogen waveguide. In the southern shaft, the opening is shaped like a horn antenna. This is quite significant if you consider that a signal coming into that chamber, if that chamber contained energized hydrogen, that signal could stimulate the emission of energy, collect that energy, and feed it into the southern shaft. Other features. Well, we asked the question. If they were using hydrogen, where did they get the hydrogen from? Well, for that, we go along a very long horizontal passage to what is termed the Queen's Chamber. In the Queen's Chamber, you have several unusual features. You have two shafts, similar, but not quite the same. In the Queen's Chamber, you have a shaft leading from the chamber to the south and one leading from the chamber to the north. When early explorers went into the Great Pyramid, they did not detect these shafts. They wouldn't have known that they were there. The only reason they were found was because a man in 1872 by the name of Wayman Dixon was in the chamber and detected a crack in the wall. He pushed a rod through that crack and he got no resistance on the rod. So he chiseled away the limestone, and lo and behold, behind that plate was the shafts. He did the similar thing on the northern face of the chamber and tapped around and found that there was another shaft there, chiseled out the limestone, there it was. These were intentional designs. They did not cut these shafts and then just put a plug in them at the Queen's Chamber. They were a part of the original block. So the question is, why? Why did they do that? In 1993, a German robotics engineer by the name of Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a robot up the southern shaft. When he got to the end of the shaft, it terminated at what is called a so-called door. But the question is, was it really a door? And my answer is no, it was not a door. It was just a plate of limestone. Through this limestone were two copper fittings. So these were really mysterious. And why would they put copper fittings at the end of this shaft? The solution in the Giza power plant is that there were actually electrodes and determined when the shaft was full of the chemical they were using and mixing to create hydrogen. Now you might ask, why was the shaft closed at the end? So we have a shaft that's closed in two places, terminated 5 inches away from the chamber at the bottom and with a plate of limestone at the top. Certainly it wasn't for the passage of air for people to breathe. And even though you may ask that, why would a mummy or a pharaoh need to breathe if he was dead? So that was another mysterious question that we had to answer. So the Giza power plant theory actually proposes that both of these shafts contain different chemicals. A hydrated zinc solution and a diluted hydrochloric acid solution. These two chemicals, if mixed, would actually boil off hydrogen. The evidence to support that proposition was found actually on the walls of the shaft and inside the southern shaft. On the walls of the shaft, early explorers found that they were covered with salt, up to 1 inch thick. They have subsequently cleaned off the salt, but the salt was there. And that would be the result of hydrogen gas boiling off and giving up some of the impurities in the gas to the limestone. So the evidence for hydrogen is there. The evidence that a liquid was contained in those shafts is very strong. If you consider that a 5-inch plate of limestone, a liquid would percolate through it, whereas it would not pass air. In the east wall is a niche. The niche is corbelled. I propose that it had an evaporator tower there, so that the chemicals that came into the chamber were actually wicked up into this evaporator tower and gave off the hydrogen. So let's climb along the horizontal passage again, and we'll go to the bottom of the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is 82 inches wide at the bottom and 42 inches wide at the top, and 28 feet high. It's quite an impressive masterpiece. I propose that within the slots, the 27 pair of slots going along the length of the Grand Gallery, were resonators, a series of resonators that actually coupled with the pyramid, drew the vibration and converted it to airborne sound at different frequencies. In other words, at the bottom you would have a larger resonator and stepping up to higher frequencies as you got to the top. In 1999, I noticed evidence that these resonators actually were there. And that evidence is on the walls and the ceiling of the Grand Gallery. Because in the past, in the history, there was a disaster, a huge disaster. And what happened was I propose that it was either a comet strike or some external force struck the planet. This caused all this destruction that we find around us and what we have talked about as we have gone around the Giza Plateau. The cracked blocks and things thrown and jumbled all over the place are the signs of a cataclysm many thousands of years ago. Inside the Great Pyramid, the evidence of that cataclysm is around the King's Chamber and the Grand Gallery, with the use of hydrogen, and also if you have the introduction of oxygen after the casing stones are stripped off, you will probably have the right conditions for that hydrogen to explode. The evidence is inside the chamber. The walls were actually pushed out over an inch. The ceiling beams were pushed up and they were cracked. So what we had was an explosion, the walls were pushed out, the ceiling beams lifted slightly, they fell down and cracked along the south side. Also in that chamber, the sarcophagus, or the granite box, is a different color than the rest of the granite. It is a chocolate brown color. And I propose that that too was a result of this explosion, that the granite box, originally a pink Aswan granite, was subject to tremendous forces and heat. And as a result, it's literally cooked like in an oven, changing the color of the granite. If we go back out through the antechamber and onto the Great Step, and if we look at the ceiling of the Grand Gallery, we will see the evidence of that explosion. The walls of the Grand Gallery have the evidence of a tremendous force, tremendous heat. And I'm not the first one to notice this. There have been architects and engineers who have been there and say that the walls are vitrified. The evidence is there to support the Giza power plant theory. And also the design of the resonators, because on the ceiling you have these scorch marks, very, very deep scorch marks. The scorch marks weren't very visible until the pyramid was closed for a year, and they actually cleaned it. And those scorch marks then became very, very clear. And what we have are two scorch marks, a pair of scorch marks on both sides on the ceiling. Also along the wall there are scorch marks that form a line, or the the blast pattern seems to form a line down, centered with the slots. So all this evidence comes together. But to sum it up, let me explain everything and how it worked. We start out with energy. That energy is the energy of the Earth. Seismic energy, vibration, feeding through the Great Pyramid. We collect that energy in the Grand Gallery and convert it to airborne sound. That sound and the natural design, or the design of the Grand Gallery, is such that any sound generated in the Grand Gallery will focus through that small horizontal passage into the King's Chamber. There, the sound actually builds and accumulates. It affects the hydrogen in the area, and then you have a microwave signal coming in from the universe. The signature of the Big Bang is actually a hydrogen signature at 21 centimeters. So there we have it. The evidence of a sophisticated, intelligent, brilliant society that created energy not in a way that is harmful to the Earth or the people that live on it, but energy that resonated, that was in harmony with the Earth. Generating the energy, they did it with harmony with the Earth and drove the Earth into harmony. We've just scratched the surface, though. I believe there is much more that needs to be found and discovered in Egypt about this lost civilization. We'll keep looking.
Chris's theory that the pyramids were some sort of power plants tied into the resonance of the Earth fascinated me. I then wanted Chris to show me evidence that there had been some sort of explosion that was associated with the pyramids. So if these pyramids were coupled oscillators, and in this cataclysm, some disaster, the pyramids just vibrated until they shook off all this granite, then for the later people who came here, the stones were lying just like this, just as we see them now, and then people were trying to quarry and split these stones, but they were already lying here scattered and tumbled, like we see them right now, right?
Exactly.
Part of Chris's theory was that the pyramids on the Giza Plateau were driving the Earth into harmony. So, I mean, in your whole theory, why these small pyramids? They're also just mini big ones? I mean, to do the same thing?
Yeah. Basically resonating at a higher frequency, but still doing the same thing. And the theory is that what they were doing is they were causing, for want of a better term, mini earthquakes. And it is...
They were creating mini earthquakes. Okay.
Mini earthquakes.
To sort of relieve the stress on the Earth.
To relieve the stress of the Earth. And so even today we're now talking about, say, the Cascadia Fault in America, that where they're speculating now that if they set off mini earthquakes, then you relieve the stress in the plates as one plate presses against the other. Right now, the friction takes over, and they build up stress, and suddenly you've got a 9.0 earthquake.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you can relieve that, but with smaller earthquakes.
If you can relieve that, then you're going click, 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 mini earthquakes, vibration, which actually allows the plates to slide smoothly over each other, rather than building up stress.
But in your whole theory of like the Great Pyramid having a maser energy in it, but are these also have some chemical that's put in them, or they're just a pure geometric form on the plateau?
Yeah, well, the Great Pyramid is different, and really, just the generation of energy is not the prime purpose for the pyramids. The prime purpose for the pyramids, in my opinion, it was to actually create harmony, to drive the planet into harmony, and to relieve the stresses of the Earth's plates. Now, if you're able to do that, if we could do that, you know, we can generate power for decades, right?
Just from the stress of the Earth's crust.
Yeah. The point I'm trying to make, David, is in our society, electricity is king. Power, energy, we use it for many, many purposes. And we can sustain a civilization for so long. All that whole civilization can be wiped out by an earthquake, by a huge uplift in the Earth's crust.
Mm-hmm.
Can just totally destroy everything. Billions and billions of dollars.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yes.
Just the tectonic
Yes.
plate shift that we can't control it now, but if we could control it,
Yes.
we could harness power, and these
Yes.
pyramids could do that.
Bingo. You got it. That's it. That's what they were for.
Fascinating, fascinating.
And so you go from, you not only have the smaller pyramids or the larger pyramids, but you have the different frequencies to match with different frequencies in the Earth. Because the Earth is a jumble of frequencies. They detected the hum of the Earth in 1998. And the hum is very, very, really sub frequencies with a whole jumble of different frequencies. So, the Great Pyramid resonates still in the King's Chamber to 440. It resonates to an F-sharp chord, as Tom Danley detected in 1995.
Okay.
And my theory is that energy is still being channeled through the pyramid.
Through the pyramid, right.
And of course, the King's Chamber is a structure that's freestanding within the center of the pyramid. It's not dampened by the walls. It's not connected to the core masonry. The floor is not dampened because it's suspended on nodes. The upper relieving chambers, there are 5 layers of them. Why?
Why? Right,
And
right.
the whole purpose is harmonics and resonance. So what we have is a progression, and these were important for the relieving of the Earth's stress. And so was the Great Pyramid. However, obviously, they reached a point where they said, well, we've got all this energy coming through these things, why don't we harness it? So they built the Great Pyramid, and they harnessed some of that energy.
Join us on our next episode where we go to Peru to search for ancient technology.